Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's Down and Dirty. We're going to talk about this situation right here, assuming that I can learn how to talk. We've cleared everything in front of us. Let's assume we're loading trucks. We're sitting up here on our pile. We're tied up against us in the front. And then we spin around and oh my lord, we've run out of room. What are we going to do? Now it's the dreaded time where you got to climb down from the pile, right? Well, not necessarily. So today we're going to talk about what I would do in this situation. So first of all, I want to preface this and say this only works in certain situations where it makes sense to get down. In all of excavating, you are constantly making decisions on how you're going to spend your time in the most efficient manner. So there are obviously some perks about sitting on a pile and loading. You've got better visibility into the truck, so it's a little safer. It saves on cycle times because you're not having to boom all the way up to reach into the truck. There's advantages from a safety standpoint too, because you can see the other side rail of the truck that you're not going to accidentally, flick out with your bucket and maybe throw a rock on the other side of the truck where someone could be walking by. So there are advantages, and when it makes sense, I always prefer to stay up on top of the pile. That's not always going to be the case. Yes, I fully recognize that before the comments blow up with this isn't practical. So you need to make a judgment call on your situation on if it makes sense to do this. But in the scenario where we're loading trucks and I've got a truck that comes every 5 minutes or so I've got a quick minute, we can actually take what we're sitting on and we're going to split the difference so that we can still stay elevated to an extent without having to jump all the way down off of the pile. And so the way I'm going to do this is we're going to spin back around here and we are going to go forward until my track, let me see if I can see, so we're going to angle you down just a hair here. We're going to go right about to where I start to get just a little tippy. Whoop, that's a little too far. And it's because I'm sitting on a pitch too, which is why we started to roll there. So that's as far as I really want to go because I'm starting to get a little tippy here. And so now we're going to go back over here. Let me angle you back up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take about half of this material and I'm going to throw it out in front. And when you're this tippy, just go nice and easy until you really get a feel for what the machine's going to do. Don't get too crazy so you don't go over backwards, because as you can see, I'm not going to be able to catch myself if I go over backwards. So this is the only time you can really get yourself into trouble backwards. You don't want to go too far. And so as you can see, I'm just cutting material down in front of me and I'm just throwing it right out there. And in this situation where we're really short on material, I'm actually going to take a little bit out of this middle section because we only need it for our track base, right? So we're going to just kind of extend our track base out just a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to track out onto that. So we'll catch ourselves with our stick here. We'll let ourselves down nice and gently, right about there. Now, we're on a slope, it's all right, don't panic. Let me get the blade down so you guys can see what's going on this side. Now what we're gonna do is the same kind of thing. We're gonna split the difference. Take half of that material, throw it out in front. And again, we only really need it on our track base. And what we're doing is we're just kind of cutting our pad down, so we're not going to sit as tall, but we've still got a decent pad and we should be able to throw out enough material, and that's what I should have specified in the beginning. This really only makes sense to do when you can throw enough material out there that you will have a full truck worth of material to load out once you kind of get your pad resettled. And I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. And again, for the sake of this, because we only need our track base, I'm going to take a couple scoops out of the middle here and just extend the area that my tracks need to sit in. And you'll see what I'm doing. If you haven't figured it out yet, you're going to see here in a second what I'm doing here. Now, let's track back out on that now. Nice and easy, we'll catch ourselves. There we go, lower ourselves right down onto our new little track pad. Look at how much further out here I can get now. It's all right if you need to get down off of your pile a little bit. That's no problem. Now we're going to scratch down our middle. And we'll throw that out in front of us. Whoop, there's a little, I believe that was a muskrat, but I'm not sure. Maybe a gopher, I don't know. I don't know my small rodent animals. And you don't need to get super precise and picky with this. Really what we're going for is just a pad to sit up on. And as you guys are starting to see, I'm starting to get a pretty decent pad up here. So let's pull ourselves back up here. And now we're using a cheat code today because we have an excavator with a blade. If I didn't have a blade, we could knock this down with a bucket, but luckily we have a blade. So we'll just do that. And now I want you guys to notice, and I'll put this down for stability because we can. Now I want you guys to notice, we got a decent amount of material that we can load out of here. But if I were gonna load a truck, let me make sure you guys can see what's going on. If I were to load a truck, that's not enough material to throw into a truck. So it is important that we recognize this. I'm proving a concept here, but in order for it to make sense for us to do this and still sit on a pad to load a truck, you need at least one full truck worth of material that after you've done all of this, you can reach out and grab and throw into the truck. Otherwise, this was a giant waste of time. And this is a perfect circumstance as to where we were able to do this, but it is a giant waste of time because I'm gonna get maybe a quarter of a truck loaded and then I'm gonna have to get down off the pile anyway like I should have done to begin with. But in bigger piles, especially when you start getting into bigger excavators and you're sitting 15, 20 feet off of the ground, you can generally knock your pile down 2 or 3 times between trucks, assuming you've got the time, and you can reform your pad. And yes, you're not gonna be sitting as high as you were, but at the same time, you're still gonna be, you know, better visual into the truck. You're gonna be saving cycle times because you're cutting off the extreme boom up and down. So there are still advantages to being able to do this, even though you're not sitting as high as you originally were. And you can do this, as you just saw, you can do this within the footprint of your pile. You don't necessarily have to climb all the way down off of your pile to expand it again and kind of bench yourself down. So that's all I've got for today. Like I said, this is a very, you know, the circumstances have to be right for it to make sense for you to do this, but this is a quick way to kind of retool your pad so that you can bench yourself down and you can stay elevated instead of just jumping right off the pile right away. So I hope this has been helpful. As always, drop comments down below. We'll catch you guys on the next Down and Dirty.